Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and this review we're looking at the Avi-8 Matador. Now, this is, I strongly believe, one of their best watches they've ever manufactured. So let's have a look at it in closer detail to see what it offers you and also the price. So starting off with the price, it is, what you're getting, a very reasonable £275 RRP. However, I have a special code I can share with you, WIAB, gets you 20% off. That makes this a pretty good £220 or approximately $290 according to today's rates. So, as you can see, Avi-8 are very aviation themed, but this one takes it on another level. It's a highly skeletonized dial, which is, for the price, extremely detailed. It is a quartz movement, so you don't actually see any cogs as such, but they've done such a great job on the detail here that it is a really striking watch for the money. So let's talk about the specs to begin with. So I've got about a 7¼ inch wrist for reference. So the diameter is 44mm. So straight away, so it is a fairly large watch. It has quite a tall height of 15mm. As you can see on my wrist, it does sit high. The height is because of the sheer amount of detail and the depth, multi-layered dial. And then a lug-to-lug length of 52mm. So yeah, it certainly is a pretty large watch with a lot of wrist presence. You do have to have a fairly large wrist to pull it off. I would certainly say if you've got smaller than a 7-inch wrist, then it would be very, very difficult to pull off. But I mean, just look at it. It's so detailed that it is absolutely striking. Weight-wise, it's 102 grams, so, not too crazy heavy, but heavy enough to feel it. Obviously, it does, because of the size as well, you can feel it on your wrist. It's pretty easy to wear. 22mm lug width, so I think the width of the strap is, pretty good ratio according to the case there. No complaints there whatsoever. 2-year warranty as well, which is pretty good, and 50-meter water resistance. So it's not the kind of watch that necessarily you'd want to get wet anyway, but you do have a measure of protection there if you did accidentally submerge it in some water, but certainly don't take it swimming. Finally, the movement. It doesn't say exactly what movement it is. However, I've done a bit of digging, and it appears to be the Miyota 6S50, which is a quartz chronograph movement. As you can see, one of the key features is the fact that it's a bit of a mecha quartz going on. So our chronograph big seconds hand there has a bit of a jolty sweep rather than just a solid tick on each second. Another feature obviously is the running 1/20th of a second indicator. So if I was to stop it somewhere, it would tell me the 20th of a second. So we can see there it's at the moment 0.4 of a 20th of a second. And another feature is the big date. Again, quite an unusual, striking visual way of displaying the date. And we have a running seconds hand down here, and then this is the chronograph 60-minute indicator. So a lot packed into it, and I think obviously it's down to the movement, to the layout, but the layout is really great. Having the date window up here, this amazing chronograph second indicator, really going for it. So very, very impressed with how it all behaves and how it all looks. Okay, so let's move on to it, to discussing it detail by detail. So starting off with the dial then, where else would you really want to start with? There's so much really to make note of that it's really difficult to describe it in detail, but as you can see, the depth of it is just really, really stunning. There's so many multi-layers, and this is the impressive thing. Usually on a watch costing this much, a skeletonized dial like this tends to look really cheap and a bit tacky, a bit nasty and a bit rubbish. Whereas in this instance, they've done such a magnificent job. It's hard to describe really how nice it is. Yes, there are still the occasional screws which appear to be fake screws, if you ask me. This one here and this one here, for instance. But just aspects such as this floating hand on the 60-minute indicator and this sort of turbine kind of appearance underneath here. All these little aspects are so impressive, minute detail that's gone into it. And for the price, it's really impressive that they've managed to manufacture something that is so detailed. The hands are pretty nice and bold as well, nice design. Legibility, yes, can be a bit affected, but I've not actually had an issue with legibility at all. Obviously, at the moment it's 22 past 12, but it's fairly easy to see that. Those with visual impairments may find it a little bit difficult to read the time. So that's one of the key issues here, really. But personally, I've got perfectly fine. I can see perfectly fine, and it's not an issue at all. I do like the outer edge as well. You can see here are hour markers and this sort of outer edge. Hour markers all applied on it, nice and deep as well, and our rehout which frames it neatly. Our date window as well. Obviously it's a big date, so we have two separate wheels. You can see the depth difference between the two wheels as well. But again, a nice little border around it. Again, the level of depth is really impressive. I really like this disc sort of, which encloses about a third of the 1/20th of a second indicator as well. So, from a visual perspective, I think it's amazing. It won't be to everyone's cup of tea, however. I mean, some people might think, oh, it's too busy, I don't like it. But if you do like the look of it, then let me tell you now, in the flesh, in the metal, it looks even more impressive than it does in just the pictures or the video. So moving on to the case then, we have a single domed crystal, as you can see there, ever so slightly domed with a bit of distortion at tight angles. PVD coated case, and as I mentioned before, we have a quite a chunky height to it. That's mainly because of the amount of depth required for this multi-layered and detailed dial. I do like the pushers, so they're sort of pump grip style with a knurled base, easy to use and provide nice decent feedback. And then our crown as well has the classic Avi-8 RAF style roundel and a knurled grip. Nice little splash of gold around the outside as well. So this ties in nicely on this model in particular, the gold running through from the dial through to the pusher and the crown. And that matches the brown strap nicely as well. So the finishing of the case, it isn't amazing. I think it probably would be a nicer if it was brushed. Really, that's probably the only thing that I think could probably be a little bit nicer. It's got a little bit of a lacquered kind of finish to it, rather than a nice, thick, solid DLC coated case. So case back have this turbine style, deep stamped pattern to it. The stainless steel against the black case might be a bit jarring for some. However, a lot of the times these case backs need to be stainless steel just to make it easy to take the case back off, basically, if you do have any issues. And then we have some various details surrounding the outside. So, nicely done case back. Moving on to the strap then. Very nice colour. I think it suits the watch perfectly. The black, the gold and the brown all work really nicely. Obviously the black stitching on the strap comes through. Also very thick, as you can see, pretty supple as well. It's a little bit stiffer than perhaps I would like, but it breaks in eventually. I do like the detailing as well. And then moving on to the buckle. So this is brushed and it has the Avi-8 logo embossed engraved on the end there, which is nicely done and nice and neat. Okay, so let's get the macro lens on and have a look at it in closer detail. So, of course, let us start with the dial. So might as well start here. Here's our little 1/20th of a second indicator. Let's get it going. There it goes, spinning away. And then you can see the detail of this little enclosure. You don't realise these things until you get it under a macro lens, but it has these little sort of vent holes, which is impressive. I'll stop that and reset it. And then as we continue, you know, we have this sort of turbine-y kind of appearance underneath it. That's another level. There's our running second hand at 6, again with a concentric circular pattern on that. Moving over here, here's our chronograph hour indicator. Again, such detail. Look at this concentric circular pattern on the outside, but then another level below it, we have a gold plate that is applied onto with some print work. Our hand is sort of, you know, poking out of nowhere basically. Moving on to the top section, here's our date, so we can see the border there. Moving further down, we can see our date wheels, Avi-8 logo, nice and subtle there as well. And you can see the date, the first digit wheel there. The second digit wheel is hidden behind there a little bit. Moving on to our hour markers, you can see they're all brushed and loom filled. Nicely detailed, and our rehout with a tachymeter printed on the inside there. Here's a couple of those cheeky fake screws, which to be fair, don't look too bad. Usually fake screws stick out like a sore thumb, but in this instance they don't look that bad. Here's a little hole here. I don't know if it does anything, but it looks good. So moving on to the hands, you can see here we have a central sort of painted line with a loomed central block as well. And our chronograph seconds hand has a red counterweight with a red tip as well, providing a little bit of colour. So, I mean, looking at it up close, the level of detail is simply incredible. So, really impressive. Moving on to the case then, here's one of our lugs. You can see it has sort of like this painted kind of finish to it, which in my eyes could be a little bit better. Brush top and sort of like a polished kind of edging to it. Moving on to this side, here's one of our pushers with our knurled base and a nice little gold tip, pump grip style. Moving on to the bottom one, exactly the same except for it's a null black. And then our crown, here we have a little gold channel with a knurled grip and our roundel on the end, which is pretty nicely done. Moving on to the case back, we have this central bit here with Avi-8 deeply engraved, and then turbine deep stamped kind of effect around the outside. Again, very nicely done, considering, you know, it's fairly simple in design, but it's well effectively done. Some deep engraving around the outside also. There's sort of like a bit of a cheeky concentric circular pattern engraved there. And then finally moving on to the leather strap. So here's our black stitching, and as you can see, you have a lovely rustic soft brown top grain there. Having a look at the side, it's well sealed, no issues whatsoever. And then on the underside, we have Avi-8 stamped on the bottom there. And then finally moving on to the buckle, as you can see, we have a brushed finish and the Avi-8 logo engraved on the top bar. Okay, so I did forget to mention the loom actually, so I'll show you a video of the loom right now. Strength is pretty average, to be honest, nothing too exciting to write home about, so don't expect it to have great loom. Okay, so without a doubt, this is the best Avi-8 watch they've ever created. The price is reasonable as well, £220 with the 20% off voucher code of WIAB. Visually, it's just stunning, and they've done such a magnificent job on creating it as well. As you can see, you have a bit of anti-reflective coating, so it does provide a flash of blue, which again aids the you know, the impressive viewing pleasure of it. But every person who's seen it, they have stopped and said, "Whoa, what is that? That is impressive." And you know, rightly so, really, because the amount of detail on this dial is, I've never seen it before on a watch costing this much. So they have done a magnificent job, and if you like the look of it, I would highly recommend it without a shadow of a doubt. So well done to Avi-8 for making their best watch yet. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and also comment as well. So this is what it's all about, and that's the Avi-8 Matador. See you soon.